Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is the 11th of October 2023, and these are the stories that we'll be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin with the historic judgment that has been given by the Supreme Court of Pakistan in the Practice and Procedures Act 2023. All the petitions against this act have now been rejected. So this act stands as it is, and it opens a new chapter as far as the supremacy of the Supreme Court and also the supremacy of the Parliament is concerned. We'll be highlighting different aspects of that in our very first story, so do stay tuned. Then we'll be talking about of course, the tensions that exist between between Israel rather and Palestine, as the atrocities on the Palestinian people continue unabated, the way we are seeing the number of casualties, the number of people who've been affected, the blockade as far as Gaza is concerned. It's a small area and it's been blocked from all sides. The food and water are not being made to enter, and most of the people who are affected are women and children. The United Nations also says that this is not allowed under international law, but of course for Israel everything is allowed under international law. This is going to be our second story. Then we'll be talking about World Mental Health Day that was recently held, but we need to highlight the importance of mental health, whether it be for women, men or children or even elderly. How important is it? Does the society understand the importance of mental health issues and how to treat them effectively? This is going to be our third story. Then we'll be talking about Afghanistan and another 6.3 magnitude earthquake that has struck the country. One after the other, we are seeing calamities that Afghanistan is being struck by. Started with Saturday, then another, and this is the third. Previous quake has already killed 2,400 people in the same region, and now again another earthquake that hits the same area. Then in the United States of America, this is our next story. Joe Biden, who's the US president, has been grilled over the handling of classified documents. A probe by special counsel Robert Hur is ongoing. Trump also is facing charges for mishandling government documents. So a lot of former and current presidents are being held for what they have done in as far as the classified documents are concerned. And finally, we'll be talking about the International Girl Child Day that is being observed today, ladies and gentlemen. It's an important day. Girls are the future. Girls are the harbingers of our future generation. They need to be tackled with, cared to properly, and handled with a lot of care, and also given a lot of love by everyone concerned in their family. They are the ones that will lead any nation or any country to the next generation, and this is very important for us as well as a country. And this is going to be our last story. Let's begin with the first, and that concerns the Supreme Court that has rejected the petitions against the Practice and Procedure Act. To discuss that, we'll be having some guests online. We also have a guest in the studio. He's our correspondent for PTV World, who handles all the judicial matters. He is Ali Andaz Haider. Ali, thank you very much to have joined us. Ali, first of all, for all those who do not understand or maybe have no idea about what judiciary stands for, or important acts like this stand for, what is this act, the Practice and Procedures Act 2023?
Well, this act, I will carry forward what you said. It's a historic judgment with respect to the Supreme Court Practice and Procedure Act. What this act has actually tried to do is dilute the powers of the all-powerful Chief Justice's office. Now, there have been calls in the past about the office of the Chief Justice having too many powers. He's the one who's going to fix the cases. He's the one who's going to constitute benches. If he doesn't want it, the case cannot be fixed, and there is nothing that anybody could do about it. So it should have been done a long time ago, but the Parliament, which felt the necessity to initiate this step, they did it, and it's a laudable act that has been enacted by the Parliament. Now, this act then ended up in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and under previous Chief Justice Ommar, who issued a stay on this act. That created another controversy. It was already, people were expecting that there will be questions about the supremacy of the Parliament, the trichotomy of the principle of trichotomy of power, and when that case is landed in the Supreme Court and Ommar issued a stay, it created a lot of troubles and problems. There were those who were against this act, and there were those who were in favor of this act. The Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Issa, he took up this case as the first one when he took oath as the Chief Justice of Pakistan. This was the first
and
case.
live proceedings on PTV.
And this is the first time in the history that the case was broadcast live for the world to see.
Ali, kindly stay online stay in the studios. We have online with us Barrister Ghauri. He is, of course, somebody who we regularly call on when it comes to judicial matters and also international affairs. Safi, thank you very much to have joined us. Safi, how important is today's judgment?
Oh, it's extremely important, Ommar. Thank you for having me with. Now, this judgment is probably one of the first examples we've seen in the country of a leader really giving away his own powers. We saw that previously in Article 53, but now, once again, we see the Justice of Pakistan clipping his own wings. And one of the most beautiful things about this entire judgment is how, if you go through since it was televised, if you go through all the hearings, you see Justice Lisa arguing with Justice Munir, saying, what option will the judges have against me if I decide to turn autocratic? What will you do if I become a dictator of this? And the only answer that Justice Munir could give him is that we'll have to wait for you to retire. And that's what the problem is. Ommar, in Pakistan, the problem is that we constantly try to hold power. Our leaders have tried to concentrate powers in their own hands and not constitute a proper democracy. So this is one of those few examples where the top man, the very head of the judiciary, himself is giving power to his judges and saying, I trust you all to make wise decisions. Now, the impact, of course, that it will have is that the Chief Justice himself will not be the master of the poster. He will be challengeable. His decisions can also be challenged to a degree. Also, decisions that are taken under Article 144.3, which was a suo motu action, which resulted in some of the biggest decisions in the country, like, for instance, the Panama Leaks case, just about every suo motu case which has changed the political system of Pakistan. Now, these decisions are appealable, and that's the funniest thing, that now a judge who takes any action against any individual, he can now be challenged on the basis of his judgment, and it could seem whether he was right or wrong about it. So it's really incredible. If you see the whole judgment, it does say that this right to appeal starts from now, and it will not apply to previous decisions.
Of course, the judgment is very important, Safi, and that is the main crux of it. And the fact remains also that it renders the parliament more supreme and more powerful as an institution as far as making decisions is concerned. Ali, there is one thing that Barrister Safi talked about, and he talked about the right of appeal. And he said that there is a right of appeal that has been given, but not in retrospect, only to cases that stand from today onwards. The right of appeal is also an extremely important point that has now been implemented in letter and spirit. How important will that be also for the future of judiciary?
To understand how important the right of appeal is in cases under Article 184.3 of the Constitution, which empowers the Supreme Court to take cognizance of a matter for the implementation of the fundamental rights. Now, it is also important if we look back at the history of how the Supreme Court of Pakistan has used Article 184.3. There is no doubt that this power has been used in some good cases, and good judgments have come out of it. Now, then there are those judgments which have interfered with the working of executive, with the working of the parliament, and which has cost the country a lot. Now, during these proceedings, where a very fine example was given by Attorney General of Pakistan, Awan, who cited the 2005 suo motu of the privatization of the steel mills of Pakistan when it was running in profit. That privatization was declared illegal. Then in 2009, the Supreme Court again takes the suo motu of the corruption that was happening in the steel mills. Now the steel mills of Pakistan is in 206 billion loss. So we suffered because of the abuse of that power which was given to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and other instances, the Rico-Dick case, which cost Pakistan a lot of billions of dollars.
And that's the important point, Ali. Of course, in retrospect, when you look at it, or in the present, when you look at it, a decision like this or an act like this is very important for the future of democratic values and principles, and the fact that it renders the parliament supreme. We'll go back to Barrister Saifulla Khan Ghauri. I did talk to my guest in the studios, our correspondent, about the right to appeal, which is, of course, retrospect. This is something that you highlighted as well. I wanted more, details as far as that is concerned. What is the importance of this Practice and Procedures Act 2023 as far as the supremacy of the Parliament is concerned?
So, Ommar, you know that this is an all-important act. This act was passed because we needed to define what the powers of the Supreme Court were. If you remember, here, the Supreme Court was undergoing deliberations. It was simply undergoing deliberations on how it can reduce the powers of the Supreme Court or what it can do. Chief Justice just decided to intervene and stop the law in its deliberation stage. Now, what this does is it puts the law making, the legislative ability back solely to the parliament, which is the job of the parliament. And I think that's what's very important. What we've seen in the past is we've seen that institutions in Pakistan do not know what their limits are. The executive seems to be exercising judicial functions, the judiciary is exercising legislative functions, the legislature is exercising executive functions, and unfortunately, it's because of this mishmash that nobody really knows what the boundaries of the constitution are. And there was an attempt then to set the boundary by legislating, exercising the power to decide what the boundaries are. And when that exercise was done, it was undone by Justice Bandial, who then continued to misuse his powers. I also want to bring the here that he is the most controversial Chief Justice Pakistan has ever seen. He continues to utilize the Supreme Court as the political party camp of one of the political parties. He wasn't taking any cases. There were no other issues that were being heard by the Supreme Court. There were only few political matters that the Chief Justice was concerning himself with, and that's what the problem is. If you concentrate power in one person's hand, then you are left at their wits. They may do whatever they want in office. And there was no way to challenge him. And then, to further cement his power, he cancelled any laws that were coming against. That is why the undoing of this judgment and the upholding of this law is going to go a far way in upholding the institutional strengths of our institution. So the parliament can function without fear, so that the Supreme Court itself can function with mutual respect and in a democratic manner where other judges can also contribute.
I'd also like to, I'd request you to kind of dilate a little bit upon the judicial aspect of it all, about this bench, the committee of 3 senior judges that is going to form benches for constitutional matters and suo motu notices from now onwards. How is that going to board forward in any case, in case there needs to be a case that needs to be taken up by this bench? How long will this take in your point of view? Do you feel that as far as the judiciary is concerned, this still gives it a certain bit of power as far as any challenges to certain acts are concerned, or do you feel it goes in the right direction as far as giving more power to the parliament is concerned?
The judiciary, by exercising their power under this judgment, continues to retain its powers. It's not like the judiciary has given up. What they're talking about is its powers of interpreting the constitution. So if you look at the judgment itself, it mentions that there are certain sections of the judgment that are in consonance with the constitution, and there is a section which was of retrospective effect, which is against the spirit of the constitution. And the constitution of Pakistan does clearly state that no retrospective legislation may be in Pakistan. So what this order does is it upholds the sanctity of the parliament by ensuring that the constitutional role given to them is reinforced, but at the same time it also lays down a boundary of its own powers by explaining what the Supreme Court is envisioned to do under the constitution. And I think that's what's most important right now. The fact of the matter is that there is only one document, Ommar, that binds us as a nation together. All the provinces, all the arms of the government, the citizens of Pakistan, and the governing bodies of Pakistan, they're all bound by that one document. So to uphold that singular document, the Constitution of Pakistan, as the most important determining factor, is going to go a long way. I think this is a great step, honestly.
All right. Another thing that I like to understand from a layman's point of view is that never in the past had any proceeding been streamed live on a channel, and of course credit goes to our information ministry and Pakistan Television to have streamed this very act live for many days. How important is it for a layman to understand how the proceedings go in the Supreme Court and his understanding of how a judgment is made?
Yes, absolutely. So that's another great step, because so far, and this is my personal experience as well as a lawyer. I go around and I hear people say things about the Supreme Court and about the High Court that are very incorrect, and they're incorrect because I have my personal experience of having gone in a layman's perspective. Things are being fudged, things are being sort of handled behind the scenes. There is no fair hearing. There is a perception that is an unfortunate perception about the Supreme Court. And by putting it out in front of the audience to see how the Supreme Court works, they will demystify law. Law will no longer be the sole property of some Supreme Court lawyers who get a right to audience. They can come out and tell their clients whatever happened by in their own words. News reporters come out, and in fact, it's very funny you mentioned this. I've recently been seeing that there was this recurring clip in which they this recurring piece of disinformation that keeps saying that the Chief Justice of Pakistan disapproves of love marriages. And the Chief Justice of Pakistan then once again has to go on record and say that he is not against love marriages. He is simply mentioning that if you enter into a love marriage, you should only love your children. That's what he said. But it has been twisted. And so what we see is that unfortunately there are malicious elements within the country, Ommar, who continue to misrepresent what judges say, who continue to misrepresent what even politicians, what armed forces, what these people say. And this is going to once again go a long way in trying to to bridge that disconnect that the ordinary people of Pakistan have with the people who are sitting up in these offices. By seeing them, they will understand why decisions are taken the way they are.
And I think that's an excellent way for an act as important as this to have been streamed for people who have understood the different complexities behind it and the way the judgment was made. Thank you so very much, Barrister Saifulla Khan Ghauri, to have joined us online, and thank you very much, Ali Andaz, in the studios to have joined us to have talked about this very, very important act, the Practice and Procedures Act 2023, that stands as it is, and of course all the petitions against it have now been put aside. Thank you so very much. We'll be back after the short break. Welcome back, and our second story concerns the conflict between Israel and Palestine, in which it's the Palestine and the Palestinians that are the victims, especially those who are encircled within Gaza, this small little place called Gaza that is encircled from all the sides, a blockade of water and food from entering the area. Who are the people most affected? It's the children, it's the women. As far as the Gaza's health ministry is concerned, they say at least 950 people have been killed, 5,000 injured in the coastal enclave since yesterday. And then of course we have a global positioning as far as this conflict is concerned. To discuss different aspects of it, we've been joined by two very important guests, and both in the studios. On my right is Jauhar Saleem Sir, former Foreign Secretary. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. And then Abur Rehman Mattar, an Arab journalist and a good friend. Thank you very much to the both of you. Let's begin with you, Jauhar Saleem Sir. The impact of the Israeli airstrikes on Gaza has been extremely important, but it is being downplayed by a lot of Western media houses. And the impact, the most of the impact that they are showing is what Hamas has done. In fact, is this not showing a certain hypocrisy as far as this conflict is concerned?
Well, that has been the long-standing trend that we've seen, that the Western media always focuses more on the Israeli side in terms of their side of the story, so to speak. This time around, what we see again on the major channels, and I've been looking at all those channels, CNN, BBC, Fox News in particular, they are primarily focused on the civilians that have been killed within Israel. But on the other hand, the very many civilians which are being killed now in the Gaza Strip, that has not gained the media attention that it deserves. Yes, hypocrisy is
rampant, let's put it that way.
it is rampant, but also, you see, we have to, there's a saying that you stand where you sit. So basically your position on these type of issues is always based on your country, your history, your cultural affinities, your political interests. So you can't, it's never in a vacuum. You know, we talk about principles and values and ideologies and ethics, but at the end of the day, they do not decide which side you support in a conflict. The decision is always based on your interests and on your historical associations, your cultural affinities, and in all these areas, there is a very, very clear link between Israel and the West. In fact, you know, the U.S. and Israeli ties, they are it's not even something which is sort of, you know, which is underplayed. In the U.S., every leader or every aspirant to presidency or any other office, high office in the country, they always come out very openly about their position on Israel as perhaps the most important strategic partner of the U.S. and their position on the Israelis or and the Jewish people as well. So I don't think this is a surprise in any way.
Abur Rehman, Mattar, is so sad and sorry to see what is going on in Gaza, the way the women and children are being handled, the men and the boys are being handled. In a small area, everything is being encircled so that even the food and water does not reach. I hope some kind of truce comes before the condition aggravates. This said, this whole conflict, when it began with Hamas, hasn't it also broken a lot of taboos or myths concerning the Israeli so-called defense industry or the Israeli defense capabilities? What's your take on that?
Exactly, it is as you said, and that's why you have to be proud now. You are sad because of what's happening in Gaza, which I agree with you, but in the same time you have to be proud because only 1,000 freedom fighters, they could penetrate the 30 feet walls which was established by the Israeli army. They could, you know, they could damage that picture in which we in the Arab world and in the whole Muslim countries are hearing since the last 75 years, that this is the undefeated army, this is the strongest army, and they have a latest technology, they have latest weapons, they have each and everything. Even so, a 1,000 freedom fighter, they could manage to enter, to kill, to capture a lot of soldiers and settlers, by the way. They are not civilians. They are settlers who are residing in those settlements in the illegal occupied land of Palestine. So you should be proud of this. Yes, on the other side, there is a very big tragedy happening inside Gaza, in which 2.3 million people are residing. And the cowardly way of attacking those civilians by just, you know, bombing them with the latest American aircraft, it reflects now the reality. I agree with Mr. Saleem when he says that, okay, maybe there is some kind of a links between Israel and the West, and there is some kind of interest. But what about us? What about the Arabs? What about the Muslims? There should be no interest. There should be principle which is guiding our action in this regard.
All right. Let's talk about some other realities, Jauhar, Saleem Saab. The United Nations role as far as this conflict is concerned. Many resolutions, but then no action to be taken because of the veto power that certain countries have as far as the United Nations Security Council is concerned. What about now? How important does the role of the United Nations become?
Well, it should be important. Of course, you know, like the UN Security Council in particular was primarily designed to intervene and rectify these type of situations internationally. It was designed to address such conflicts. But unfortunately, we have seen that in the past as well, that the United Nations and particularly the UN Security Council is not able to address. And why? Because of the mechanisms. You know, certain countries have veto powers, and you know, even one country can just veto a resolution, and it stops there. This time around, this matter was taken to the United Nations Security Council by Malta, which is, you know, because there are 5 permanent members, the P5, and there are 10 non-permanent members. So the non-permanent members that we have presently, only one major Muslim country is there, UAE. Albania is there as well. You know, it's a Muslim majority country, but, you know, like not in the same way. So So the thing is, Malta is a very small country, so most probably some other country would have asked it to bring the matter to the UNSC. And the matter was, there was an emergency session which took place behind closed doors. And in that session, the countries, they basically expressed their position. There were differences. Like the US had its position very they wanted to condemn the Hamas attack unconditionally. There were other countries who wanted to talk about, the Palestinian issue as such. For instance, China and Russia had also a very nuanced position. So at the end of the debate, they could not reach a consensus. What to talk of a resolution? They could not even achieve a consensus.
What about the OIC, Jauhar sir? What about the OIC? The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has requested for a special, convening of the OIC because of this, development. How important does the role of the OIC become now? Because it is, of course, a conglomerate of Muslim countries.
Yeah, no, OIC is a very important forum, particularly for the Muslim countries, of course. And we have to recall that OIC came into being, when there was this problem of, there was fire in the Al-Aqsa Mosque and, arson, an attempt to arson. That is how it came into being. So basically it came into being because of this Palestinian conflict. Ever since, it has taken very strong positions on all these conflicts involving Muslim countries, and primarily on this conflict and Jammu and Kashmir conflict, for instance. Now, I think it becomes very important that the Muslim countries, they act in unison. They have a common position because that will add weight to their whatever position they adopt. Now, what I see is very interesting. I've seen the statements emerging from different countries. Egypt, for example, UAE, Saudi Arabia, major Muslim countries, Iran, and all. So I see some shades of opinion.
All right.
Like, okay, they are all citing their support to the Palestinian cause, but at the same time, there are nuances there. UAE's position, in particular, UAE has called this act by Hamas a serious aggravation, for instance. Other countries, Saudi has focused on the need for the resolution of this Palestinian long-standing issue and the two-state solution. And Pakistan has a very clear position. While Saudi has talked about dealing addressing this issue as per the aspirations of the Palestinian people and the right to live a decent life, and Pakistan has categorically talked about a two-state solution and the need for an independent, sovereign Palestinian state as per the aspirations of the Palestinian people and the United Nations resolutions on this issue. And I think it's very important because the Muslim countries, this is a great challenge. And in the coming days, it could be a greater challenge.
I think this is going to be a very important challenge for the Muslim countries and for the world in particular, because I see the world polarized. Abur Rehman, Mattar, I see a lot of polarization in the opinions in the world. Even there are many Jewish people who online are favoring the Palestinians and are talking against the Israeli occupiers and against Israel. We are seeing protests across the world in favor of the Palestinians. In Pakistan also there is a lot of support. There is going to be a protest this Friday that has been called by the JUIF. The caretaker federal cabinet also today demanded immediate cessation of the bombardment in Gaza and ending of the illegal siege of the territory. What solution now stands in front of you or in front of the world to be taken at the earliest? Is it the two-state solution? Is it the cessation of hostilities? Is it for Israel to look back at what it has done in the past decades and revert a lot of its policies? What do you foresee?
Israel never respected any kind of any resolution passed by any international forum, whether it is United Nations, whether it is the Security Council or the OIC, and they have already signed a peace agreements with Egypt, Jordan, and now there is the Abraham agreements with Bahrain, UAE, Sudan, but practically they do not respect these agreements. That's why I think for Palestinians at least, it seems as if all these United Nations 82 resolutions passed in favor of them. It is behind them nowadays. And even it seems as if it is even for the other side. When the United States is moving a warship carrier, and it's moving another one which will reach in 2 weeks, and when the United States openly pledges 8 billion USD for support of Israel only for this operation, it gives an impression as if the United States is trying to impose some kind of a peace or stability designed in Washington in the Middle East. And you don't know, maybe the whole map of Middle East will be changed.
Well, only time will tell, but of course all eyes are glued on the current situation and especially what is happening in Gaza. We hope some kind of truce comes sooner than later so that the people who are under such a lot of stress because of the lack of food and water can at least heave a sigh of relief, and then we move on from there, whether on a two-state solution, whether on some other kind of truce. Thank you very much to the two gentlemen, Jauhar Saab as well as Abur Rehman Mattar, to have joined us in the studios with this. Ladies and gentlemen, another aspect to the Palestinian issue is also the mental health. Palestinians or any people who are under siege, the way they are under a lot of stress. This causes a lot of issues, mental and physical. World Mental Health Day was recently observed all across the world. But the fact is that it should not be observed just one single day. The impact of mental health and how to treat it is paramount. More in the following report.
Mental health impacts our thoughts, emotions, behavior, and ability to cope with stress, interact with others, and make decisions. Mental health encompasses our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. In his message on the World Mental Health Day, President Dr. Arif Alvi has called for creating awareness about mental health and the well-being of people. The president said most mental illnesses can be cured in a cost-effective manner if diagnosed and managed at an early stage. The prevalence of mental health problems in Pakistan is increasing rapidly. Common mental health problems have been identified which seems to have a positive association with socio-economic adversities, relationship problems, and lack of social support. Depressive and anxiety disorders appear to be highest, followed by bipolar, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. There is a serious problem of substance misuse and drug addiction. Millions of drug addicts have been estimated, and the national suicide attacks, explosions, and even safety precautions, such as long curfew hours, have caused damage on an unprecedented scale. In addition to the continuous violence and threat to life, there has also been a damaging effect to the psychological health of many people. Psychological trauma as consequence of violence is on the rise, prevailing in the whole area. As a result, individuals are manifesting a number of symptoms of psychological trauma, which is affecting all aspects of lives.
We discuss mental health, the implications of it, how we need to not disregard it and work on it properly for the benefit of the society, of any member of the society. We've been joined in the studios by Dr. Mowadat Awan. He is a psychiatrist, a very renowned one at that, and a Sitara-e-Imtiaz as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. I did interview you a couple of years back for another of my show, and I remember those times very fondly. Dr. Saab, let's talk about mental health. The times have changed, and so has this mental stress. A lot of stress comes directly, a lot comes indirectly. A lot of it is related to social media as well. How can one detect if there is an issue as far as stress or the mental health of an individual is concerned? What are the indicators?
Well, the biggest indicator of poor health, mental health, or a deteriorating or an ever deteriorating mental health is a change in functioning of an individual. You see, like I am a doctor, so I see patients every day. So if I was to undergo a degree of morbid stress or pathological stress, I am going to start to find it exceedingly difficult to cope with my patients. You're a presenter, you're a learned person, you read books, you prepare yourself for your programs. Now suddenly, God forbid, if you start to undergo pathological stress, you would feel, I can't deal with this program. This is too much.
Of course.
There's just too much happening around me. I can't cope. So the word is akopia. You just can't cope with what you are doing with poor mental health. So that's the first indicator. The second is your own degree of unhappiness and distress starts to gradually increase. You become exceedingly low in mood, you become fearful, all kinds of ruminations and odd thoughts start to bother you. Your day-to-day functioning in terms of your sleep, your appetite, your sexuality, all these phenomena, which are regular, normal human functions, are suddenly forlorn. They're gone from your life, and you can't sleep well, you can't eat well, you can't deal with situations any better than.
Let's talk of dealing with situation, Dr. Mowadat. We see so many crises happening in the world right now. We see the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we see the Palestine-Israel conflict, we see other conflicts, we see what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. A lot of stress that is caused by such incidents. How can people who are under such duress deal with it in an effective manner if they do not have the necessary, how should I say, access to maybe a mental health practitioner or access to a doctor?
Foremost, Ommar, I think we need to understand that the distress that we were talking about earlier, the distress that I experience or you experience, is something that cannot be even compared with what is happening in Palestine today or what's happening in Kashmir or Ukraine. These scenarios are abnormal, intense. These are scenarios for which the human body and human mind doesn't have the capacity or the requisite tools to deal with.
True.
It's like an extraordinary cancer that hits an individual. If it is a routine infection, a common cold, my body is designed to deal with it. But these extraordinary circumstances like a war, which is a situation now that these three circumstances or geographic settings are experiencing, human beings lack the neurological, the psychological and biological systems to deal with this degree of stress. There are no coping mechanisms.
But Dr. Mowadat, when it comes to crisis such as what is happening in Palestine, and I talked earlier to my two guests about the whole siege of a small area that houses so many people, women and children in particular, not giving them access to food and water. That creates a lot of undue stress because of the fact that subconsciously that you might not be getting the necessary amount of food or water in the next 24 or in the next 48 hours. How does one deal with it? How does one cope with it? What are the physical ailments that one should look out for it? And do you feel the importance of society, social elements, people around you and their reassurances can somehow lessen the impact?
Well, you see, the shock and disbelief of being incarcerated in a rooms and in siege, as Palestine is right now, and the feeling that there's no immediate possibility of a rescue available to me is an amazingly traumatic and distressful circumstance and situation. Now, the people who are incarcerated inside are in many ways people who are stuck in a place which has been surrounded by rubble after an earthquake, and there's constant fear of dying. So there's this imminent death that's staring you in your eyes.
It's claustrophobic effect that you start getting.
Absolutely. So there you go. It's foremost not possible for individuals there to suddenly start to think of innovative methods to deal with. So the only chance that they have is activity.
What kind of activity are you looking at?
They need to start to talk to each other, hold hands, interact with each other with stories told to each other, which are stories where they feel that the other person can experience the pain that they have, and the burden on each person is shared burden. And that connectivity between human beings is your only weapon at hand with which you can deal with. The sharing of resources, not only just sharing of a blanket or sharing of a space, no, sharing of emotions, feelings, distress that you're experiencing, and acknowledgement by people within the room that yes, it's okay, it's normal to feel this way. So the normalization of that situation is something that's hugely important. The second thing that's extremely important for psychological distress for incarcerated, under siege people is their basic needs. The psychological distress can wait, but it is their needs on a day-to-day basis, the water, food, heat, gas, light, those essentials. If they are missing from your life, they inherently multiply the effects of the siege or that distress that is happening to the body. And very rapidly, human mind starts to affect the body, and you get body and mind get into a vicious cycle where body starts to destroy the mind and the mind starts to destroy the body. It's an absolute disaster, particularly when you are surrounded by and you're not challenged by a natural disaster, which you can attribute to the to nature.
No,
or
not
to
a natural
God.
disaster. What we are seeing in Palestine is not natural at all.
So that is what makes it extremely difficult, because human-made disasters have a far bigger impact on fellow human beings. You suddenly lose trust on humanity. You suddenly lose trust on the fact that you belong to, a system where fellow human beings who you expected were to peacefully live with you. Okay, it's a difficult situation. Everybody knows that Palestine and Kashmir and similar settings, there are foes that are placed next to each other in geographically tight circumstances, but they live in some kind of a symbiotic relationship in which you don't really on a day-to-day see each other as foes. You get along with these people that you do not necessarily like, but you know that they're not going to come and destroy you. Now suddenly the situation is that there are, you feel as if you were a lamb sitting in a jungle surrounded by a herd of tigers and wolves and hyenas.
I would rather revert to hyenas when it comes to the Palestinian issue. This said, a lot of people say that under a lot of duress, a lot of people emerge stronger mentally. Is that an individual capability? How does one become mentally stronger or mentally weak under duress?
Well, you see, foremost, this is a very interesting saying that it is the same heat that softens a potato and hardens an egg. So this phenomenon has been widely studied in the world, and it's called post-traumatic growth.
All right.
So when you go through this kind of a challenging circumstance, it's like the wound of a soldier. You see, you find out the strength of a soldier and his caliber as a soldier from the number of wounds that he has or carries from previous battles. So that's why you call him a battle-hardened soldier. So similarly, human soul and human mind also has the capacity to deal with these challenges. And if you keep going through these traumas, some people have a tendency of growing in terms of their spiritual strength, in terms of their learning of the meaning of life, the transientness of the experiences that they're going through. And they tend to learn from the pain that they're experiencing at a psychological level to grow as humans. Now, this tendency sometimes comes from the amount of support that you have received.
All right.
You see, a soldier is able to take up those wounds because he knows that he's constantly supported by fellow soldiers. So those human beings who in these moments of crisis know that the whole world is out there supporting us. So people from Pakistan and people from the rest of the world are right behind them. That feeling of righteousness of the cause in which you are sustaining these injuries or these challenges sometimes can give you tremendous strength. Then of course, being a Muslim, the folklore and the tragedies that you have heard about in your life, the tragedy of Karbala, for example, are symbols which make you feel that yes, when you stand up for a righteous cause, you are bound to go through thirst, you're bound to go through hunger, you're bound to lay lives for that cause. And it is that righteousness of your cause that generates a degree of resilience within you. Those are only some of the factors that can enhance.
And I think these are very important, Dr. Mowadat, not only in a general perspective, but also in a regional and a global perspective of what we are seeing happening in the world right now, whether it be in Palestine or others. But of course, Palestine is the key issue that we are seeing, and how people are, under duress and how they are coping with this mechanism is also very important. So in this whole scenario, I think the social help that people have, the surroundings that one has, also will play a very important role. Thank you very much, Dr. Mowadat, to have joined us, to have come all the way to talk about world mental health and the mental health under duress, under circumstances such as what we are seeing in Palestine. Thank you, sir. A pleasure to have seen you after so many years.
Absolutely. And your program comes at just the perfect time, given the fact that only yesterday, 10th of October, was the Mental Health Day.
Exactly.
And this year's slogan was that mental health is the basic human right.
Exactly.
So that human right cannot be denied.
Exactly.
Even
that,
in war.
that right should be given to everybody, including the Palestinians.
Even in war.
Exactly. Let's come to our last stories very, very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. We're short of time. The first is Afghanistan, that has been struck by another 6.3 magnitude earthquake. It had already been struck twice, once on Saturday and another in between. The number of casualties keep on increasing. The casualties from the first earthquake were already had passed 2,400 in the same region. People are traumatized and they need as much help as possible. Next, let's come to the United States of America, where Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America, is being grilled over handling of classified documents. Probe by Special Counsel Robert Hur is ongoing. This is not the only president who is being probed. Also, former President Donald Trump is facing charges for mishandling government documents. And finally, let's come to the International Girls Child Day that is being observed today, ladies and gentlemen, that is focusing on empowerment. The theme this year is Invest in Girls' Rights. The day emphasizes on nurturing girls' potential, well-being and significant progress in Pakistan as well for girls' welfare and progress. This is what we aim for. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.